The goal of the retreat was to help the cast of Love and Hip Hop Atlanta Season 13 recover and start again. However, the events that transpired were far from tranquil. It all began with a little argument between Spice and Bambi. Fans are used to this kind of sharp-tongued confrontation, but nobody anticipated what happened next. In front of the whole group, Erica Mena snapped at Mendeecees in a scene that has everyone talking, yelling the now famous sentence, "I will have you imprisoned." Yandy was totally unprepared, stood still and immobile. Her eyes spoke for themselves. Fear, treachery, and confusion. Time seems to have stopped there. There have been videos going around. The same question is being asked by fans who are responding in real time. What caused Erica to get so irate? Did Mendeecees say anything? Or did years of stress finally get to you? One unfiltered, passionate outburst. Reactions are all over social media. Erica went too far. According to some, others claim that Mendeecees' anger must have been sparked by something she did off camera. Yandy slept while standing in the center of it, all seeing her world fall apart once again. It wasn't your typical retreat battle. It was a personal matter. Fans are now questioning, did Season 13 just change everything for this trio? Let's examine the situation in light of rumors of legal threats and unsolved conflict. Like all previous phony communications, it began with a hip-hop and love trip. Awkward grins, drinks, and that subdued tension. You sense it, but no one discusses it. For what the producers referred to as a healing retreat, the cast had been reunited. However, everyone in the audience was aware that an explosion was certain. It didn't take long this time either. At first, it wasn't even that deep what started it all. There was some back and forth between Spice and Bambi on who was and wasn't being false. Spice made fun of them. Within minutes, the gathering had changed from lighthearted banter to loud voices and sidelong glances as Bambi returned the clap. Bambi got to her feet. With a drink, she spoke in a calm but passionate tone. Her voice was crisp as she said, "You always got something slick to say." To Spice, as if the remarks didn't bother her, Spice brushed her hair off her shoulder and didn't back down. "No, that was all it needed. Sensitive. Don't blame me if your truth sounds like shade." Tension crackled like a live wire when the table became silent and everyone's gazes shifted between the two ladies. In an attempt to prevent a conflagration, Yandy leaned in Mendeecees' direction and said something. However, the fuse was already ignited. No one at the time noticed that Erica had been seated simmering there. Although she wasn't there for the first confrontation, you could tell by the way her eyes searched the room and her mouth tightened. She watched and waited. Something changed in Erica the instant Bambi mentioned phony friendships and individuals only appearing when cameras were around. Her head jerked toward Yandy's and Mendeecees' direction. She exclaimed, loud enough for everyone to hear, "That's funny. There are some individuals here who really like performing when they believe no one is looking." Mendeecees arched a perplexed eyebrow. What is the intended meaning of that? His voice was forceful yet quiet as he requested. Erica grinned and cocked her head, saying, "You understand what that means? Yandy, you and your picture-perfect wife should quit acting like you're above the mess when you're half the time churning it up." Blinked, taken by surprise. Calmly, Erica, "This ain't got nothing to do with us," she said. She seemed to be trying not to let the circumstance affect her too. As seen by the tight, controlled tone of her voice, Mendeecees intervened, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. He answered, "We're not here for all that. It is intended to be a fresh start." But Erica wasn't finished. She pointed straight at him as she rose up from her seat. "A clean slate," she said again, raising her voice. "You don't get to come up after everything and act as if you're not the issue. You see?" It became considerably silent in the room. Everyone in the little side chats ceased. The phones were out already. A record had been hit. Spice and Bambi were now observing, their argument almost forgotten, as Erica began tempo. "Do you want to seem innocent?" However, she recalled the things Mendeecees shook his head, saying, "It's the little remarks, the side conversations you thought I didn't hear. I have no idea what you're discussing." However, Erica wasn't paying attention. Once again, she pointed, "Don't tell lies. You and your wives like seeming to be superior to everyone else. You don't gossip, for example. You don't become untidy in front of other people." Erica interrupted Yandy just as she was about to say anything. "And you just stand there grinning as if you're not listening to him speak slickly." Yandy's expression shifted. She lost the composure she had been attempting to maintain. "You have some nerves," she said. "Tell me you have an issue with me. However, don't drag my marriage into your mess." Erica gave a sour chuckle. "It's a disaster now. I see. Yandy, I assumed you were above the mess. You say it all the time, don't you? You pick and choose who receives your grace. Despite your constant preaching about healing and family, Mendeecees moved in front of them. He remarked, "This is getting out of control. For genuine, we need to relax." However, nothing was calmed. By his speech, Erica just became more irate. "You believe no one will confront you if you just play the peacekeeper." "No, not now." Her face was inches from his as she moved closer to him. "I'll have you locked if you don't stop talking." "Slick up." The remarks were like a grenade to the room. Everybody froze. Gandhi opened his lips but did not speak. Stunned, Mendeecees stepped back. "Just what did you say?" inquired Erica. Folded her arms. "I heard you. I've had enough of the games. We'll see how quickly things move to the left if you keep pushing me." The menace in her voice was strong despite its calmness. A dot. Bambi whistled quietly. "Co," she said as she took out her phone. Just as everyone else did, this just went to another level. Spice spoke to the girl in a whisper. Beside her, wide-eyed, unsure whether to cut the moment or let it play out, one of the producers who was off camera took a step forward. DC Min did not move. He clenched his jaw. "You're saying that you'll call the police on me? For what purpose?" Erica gave a shrug. "For anything I'm feeling. Perhaps for approaching too closely. Perhaps in an attempt to scare me. Perhaps because you believe you are the most composed person in the room. You believe you can speak to me in any manner." Yandy stepped in now, her voice harsh, and said, "Let's not pretend like men don't get away with a lot on this show, just because they keep their voices low." Yandy glanced around. "You are distorting everything, Erica. Stop it. You initiated this. No one approached you or raised a hand." Erica turned to face the fire in her eyes. "I started this. No, it all began when you made me feel like the crazy one, behaving as if I was always going overboard when, in reality, I was just responding to pressure." Mendeecees made a breathed and attempted to defuse the situation once again. "Listen, you can't simply go about threatening people like that. I don't want any issues." There was no warmth in Erica's grin. "Watch me," she said, "so I'll really do it the next time instead of simply saying it." A modest dam was released by someone in the background. The room's vibe had changed entirely. No more false peace, no more jokes. Nobody knew what would happen next, and this was a serious boundary being crossed. As the cameras rolled, the producers were frozen, and Yandy seemed to be breaking in the midst of all. She wasn't shouting. She wasn't in tears. However, you could tell something had changed inside of her because her hands were trembling slightly, something from which it would be difficult to recover. Mendeecees first remained silent. He just stood there and gazed at Erica, as if he was attempting to comprehend how things quickly got out of control. The room wasn't waiting. However, voices began to rise once again. The audience is humming. Everyone is responding, recording, and whispering. "Yo," Bambi whispered, leaning against Spice. "This is going to be on every blog by tonight." Spice nodded, their eyes meeting. On Erica, as if she was in shock at what she had just seen, the whole energy was inverted. There was just unadulterated anxiety that could be cut through. No jokes, no retreat sentiments. A dot. Everyone could see that Erica wasn't finished, but she turned around and took a few steps away, as if she was. With her mouth clenched and her arms folded tightly over her chest, she started pacing. "Have you ever had enough?" Without even turning to face them, she said those words aloud. "I'm done with individuals who behave as if they can manipulate your identity, your narrative, and believe there won't be any repercussions." Yandy spoke quietly to prevent the situation from becoming worse. "Nobody is teasing your name, Erica. Tonight, we didn't even mention you." Erica came to a halt and gently spun around. "Oh, I'm making it up now." Her gaze shifted between Yandy and Mendeecees, really crisp. "You all appearing so innocent and clean all the time. I become the villain after saying one thing. However, things are very different when you two converse behind closed doors." At last, Mendeecees came forward. The room's air became congested. The creators themselves were no longer acting invisible. Near the rear, a few of them were whispering to one another as they debated whether to stop the cameras or continue. There were still some casts and phones in use. In order to avoid being caught in the midst of what was obviously rapidly spinning out of control, members had stepped outdoors. Then, the time arrived. That made it all much more complicated. Although Erica's voice trailed off, the manner she uttered it chilled everyone in the room. As she walked back toward Mendeecees, she added, "Say it again, very slowly. I don't care who is looking. If you keep pressuring me, I'll have you locked up for good this time." "Try me," Mendeecees said without flinching. However, the constriction in his jaw spoke for itself. Yandy walked between them. touching Mendeecees' breast with one hand while the other reached back toward Erica. She murmured, "Stop," with a little break in her voice. "Please, this isn't who we are. This isn't it." Erica laughed sharply. "Who we are," she repeated out loud. "You don't even know who you are anymore. Girl, you used to defend women, but now you hide behind your husband like a shadow, not daring to acknowledge that he could be the issue sometimes." Yandy was really affected by it. Her gaze shifted to Mendeecees. "Back to Erica," she remarked. "Don't talk to me like you know me. You believe that shouting and threatening makes you powerful, but it simply makes you seem confused." Erica's face briefly changed to one of pain or remorse, but she quickly swallowed it. "No, what makes me strong is not allowing anyone to make me feel small again," she stated. "Not a producer, not a woman, nor a guy. And maybe you shouldn't invite me around if you can't handle me being real," she said, taking a step back with her arms crossed once again. Mendeecees shook his head slowly as he glanced down and said, "No one is attempting to minimize you. You guys have problems, yet you're still attacking me in public like that. That is incorrect." Or arched an eyebrow. "Oh, you're concerned about right now?" She looked around. "When you told others that I was unstable and unreliable, you didn't give a damn, did you not say that?" Mendeecees remained silent. "You were not required to." The quiet was plenty. Someone from the crew at last intervened, attempting to tactfully recommend a break. "Perhaps we take 5, he muttered. However, no one took any action. The actors were riveted to the action. Even Spice, who usually didn't say anything, was silent now, her eyes darting back and forth between the three of them as if she were seeing the last round of an unexpected battle. Then it seemed as if she was unable to contain it any longer. "Yandy broke," she added. "I have defended you," in a shaky voice, several times, despite being warned not to. "Even I'm still standing between you and my husband, trying to prevent you from making things worse, even after you put me under the bus." Her voice broke. "Are you even able to hear yourself?" At first, Erica didn't respond. She only gazed. The last thread keeping the room together was then she remarked, "Maybe you should stop standing between us and start seeing who he really is." Broke Yandy's hands fell away. She took a hesitant step back without uttering a word, anything, but her expression was one of utter destruction. She wasn't only injured, she seemed to be someone who just saw her allegiance being ripped apart and tossed in her face. Men did not touch her, but they did stare at her with worry on their faces. Perhaps he was aware that it wouldn't help. Perhaps he was in too much, shocked to move. The ensuing quiet was oppressive. It seems that even Erica was aware that she could have gone too far, but it was too late. The harm was already done. Everyone was aware that this was more than simply reality TV. It was a personal matter. Outside is a deep, throbbing dot. It was black in the sky. New wounds have been created by the retreat that was meant to heal old ones. Additionally, as the film continued, the actors was left attempting to determine how they arrived. How a vacation intended to promote peace devolved into a verbal and physical battle that left emotional devastation in its wake. What will happen next was unknown. All they were aware of was that nothing will be the same in the future. Not the show, not the trust, not the friendships. One explosive moment had altered everything. For a long time, no one moved. The air seemed heavy, as if someone was really breathing. It might trigger another explosion if it's too loud. At last, Mendeecees turned away and walked with his hands on his head toward the patio's edge. He was standing still, attempting to gather his thoughts rather than moving. Zooming in from a distance, the camera eye caught him by the side. The stress in his posture spoke louder than his largely veiled face. This wasn't the kind of turmoil you could leave behind. The sort that stayed with you was this one. Erica sat down gently inside, just like she was beginning to feel the weight of what she had just unleashed. She had stopped shouting, her voice had become quiet, and she twisted a bracelet around her wrist as if to divert her attention, but she continued to stare at her hands. Yandy stood a few steps away, her eyes moist but her face firm, her arms folded tightly over her chest. She didn't say she might have said anything, but her silence screamed more than words. Bambi nodded as Spice leaned down and said in a whisper, "Yo, that went too far." When she said, "way too far," on tape, she really threatened to lock him up. Neither of them seemed to be, they no longer want to be close to its core. They didn't laugh. They weren't being disparaging. Like everyone else, they were only observing. Then the stillness was finally broken. Off to the side, Shakina was standing with her arms crossed and her brows up. "Can we please just be honest for a moment?" She's voice broke the silence as she spoke. "Erica, are you crazy? I understand, but making such a threat to call the police on a black guy in public is unacceptable. Come on, we must be superior than that. Erica's face tightened as she glanced up. I'm not sorry for my feelings. In that moment, she said, I was set off. Shakina gave a head shake. You're hurt, I do. However, you went over the line. That type of threat has the power to destroy someone's life, whether you intended it or not. Erica blinked quickly, but she remained silent, perhaps because she was aware that what had just been stated had some truth to it. Perhaps she was reluctant to confess in front of all those cameras. Mendez emerged outside and returned inside at last. Although his expression had calmed, it was still not serene. He seemed worn out and depleted, as if the burden of everything was now settling in. He approached Yandy directly, dropped his voice, and said, You good? Yandy didn't respond. Immediately, she had not finished processing. At last, she gave a little nod, although her Erica was always in the spotlight. Men with dots, DC turned to Erica and said in a composed but serious tone, he replied, I don't know what I did to make you feel that way. Threatening to lock me up, however. You know when you've gone too far. Erica looked him in the eye. You have been criticizing me, she murmured softly. Since day one, I hear what you say behind my back, even when you're smiling in front of me, Yandy, and you both. Mendeecees gave a head shake. Nobody is flawless. Yes, we may have stated some things, but it's not proper of you to come after me like way. Not in front of all these people, especially. He surveyed the space, his voice becoming somewhat louder. Because of what they see on television, people already believe they know us. However, that's not the whole picture either, as they saw tonight. At last, Yandy spoke in a steady, quiet voice. When we are wounded, we all say things. However, she hesitated. This was not like the others. You weren't only trying to harm him, you attempted to ruin him. For what purpose? Because it seemed to you that we didn't value you? Erica, that's not how you earn respect. Erica got back up. You don't have to lecture me. She said that for years, you had been dishonest with me. You only offer the assistance you claim to give when it helps you seem good. However, I become the antagonist the moment I point anything out, Yandy remarked, unflinching. You made yourself the villain tonight. That was all your own doing. The words were powerful. Erica's mouth clenched. She seemed to be about to retaliate, but something stopped her. It may have been fatigue. Perhaps it was the fully closed, finished expression in Yandy's eyes. There was a lot of enthusiasm in the room. Nobody was no longer shouting. The stillness, however, seemed more overwhelming in some way. Everybody was observing, anticipating the next speaker and the next action. The anxiety was abruptly relieved by the sound of a phone alarm. A crew member gasped as they glanced down at their screen. Yo, they said. It's already online. Everyone's phones were out in a matter of seconds. The moment had gained momentum on social media. Already, the video of Erica yelling, I'll have you locked up, was making the rounds. It was being reposted by pages. It was being dissected by fans. Hashtags were all over the place. Chronologies #Hasharukamina Menges, #LHL Season 13, and #Yandy were popular. In real time, people were taking sides. Spice shook her head as she browsed through her feed. The comments are crazy, yeah. Leaning over, Bambi continued to read. There were many who claimed that Erica set him up. All right. Others said that Mendez was deserving. And Yandy, everything slowed down for a while. The world seemed smaller, yet the cameras were still rolling. The three of them alone, surrounded by a disaster they were unable to clean up. The door then opened. While muttering something to another crew member, a producer entered. The message was sent quickly. VH1 was already asking for the video to be reviewed. Just in case, the legal staff had been informed. Drama was no longer the only thing. It was business. And then things. Are different a doc? Yandy glanced toward Mendeecees after glancing at the cameras. Are they going to let this go unchecked? Well, he gave a head shake. With that tape out there? No way. Erica said nothing. Her cell rang once more. One more message. Another repost from a blog. You could see the weight of what she had spoken weighing heavily on her shoulders. Thought outdoors. It was awesome. Everything was still blazing. However, inside the retreat home, the harm was already done. Trust was broken. Reputations are at stake. Only the individuals in the room were aware of how genuine it seemed, even while the rest of the world watched via their screens. There was no story here. Lying no more. This was the price of drawing attention to oneself, of talking too loudly, of pushing too much, and no one was certain that there was a way out. Not now. The retreat home was silent later that night, but not in a serene manner. It was shattered. The late-night beverages, the candid conversations in the kitchen, and the regular laughs that was not occurring. Deadlights were turned down early, rooms were sealed off, and the few actors we were still lingering and whispering to one another. Yandy was sitting by herself on the back patio, bundled up under a blanket, gazing out into the woods. She didn't glance down, even though her phone buzzed every few seconds. She was aware of it already. More noise, more footage, and more comments. Mendez walked the corridor inside. He hadn't eaten or slept, and his mind kept going over everything again. The way Yandy's expression transformed, the way the crowd responded, and the way Erica had shouted those words when the internet took over the narrative. It was now about all that followed, not just the event. How are you? Recuperate after being accused on camera and threatened with police intervention in front of the world in real time. Erica was curled up on the side of a bed in another area of the home, scrolling by way of her communications. Some were supporting her and praising her for her courage in defending herself. Others were accusing her of being nasty, cunning, and deadly. She had already endured a lot on the program. However, this was unique. She was aware of it. It was palpable in her chest. A part of her knew she had gone too far, even if she wasn't prepared to admit it out. Her door was abruptly knocked on. She took a while to respond. Another knock with a voice, this time low, calm, almost worn out. Can we have a conversation? It was the dot of Mendeecees. Slowly, her expression inscrutable. She opened the door. His hands were in his pockets as he stood there. ... Not aggressive, not furious. A beat later, she moved to make room for him. The TV was playing something neither of them was actually watching, and the room was dimly lighted. DC Men sat down on the other side of her. There was a period of silence before he spoke. You probably have no idea what that moment accomplished. Erica averted her gaze. Do you suppose I'm unaware of its size? Hey, ever since it aired I've been mentioned a lot. That isn't what he said. I mean, I'm not referring to the blogs here. I'm referring to us, this cast, this ensemble. With a single phrase, you completely altered the dynamic. She take a breath. I was in a tight spot. You said you would call the police on me then. Still composed, he asked, but there was a lot of weight in his voice. I assume you are aware of how that seems. Not just for our children, Yandy, myself, and everything else we've been working to create. You gave me a sense of insignificance, as like I was always the loud one, the theatrical one, she fired back, finally meeting his gaze. The one at which people scoff. I had had enough of being ignored. So say that, he answered. Say that you were offended. Let's say you're injured. However, don't, Erica, use the cops as a weapon. Not here on Earth. Not in this weather. And she had no answer for it. She twisted her fingers as her gaze returned to her hands. For once, Eric Mina remained silent. Really silent, Mendeecees went on. I am not here to fight. I just had to tell you directly that what you stated is accurate. It came down heavily. It's more than simply a show moment. Real individuals are harmed in real life. A lengthy silence was followed by I didn't want to hurt you, but you did. Erica eventually whispered. Downstairs, he murmured quietly. Yandy was conversing with the producer. Despite her controlled, quiet voice, she spoke with seriousness in every word. This shouldn't be misconstrued. In my opinion, people must realize that the events were not pre-planned. She was not instructed to say that. It was true. Additionally, it will cause more harm than you may imagine if it is altered to seem like a little altercation. The producer nodded and made a note, pledging to return it to the network. However, Yandy had spent too much time in this game. She was aware of how these things worked. Hey, a season may be defined by one stunning clip. A reputation might be ruined by a one poor edit. Furthermore, once it was out there, it couldn't be recovered. The cast was gathered for a group scene later that night, something that the creators thought would provide some clarification or closure. They were seated in a large circle in the main living area. Spice and Bambi said nothing. With her usual skepticism, Shakina sat back in her chair and observed everything. Last to enter, Erica's face was inscrutable. On the other side of her was Yandy Y. Mendeecees beside her. There was a prolonged period of silence in the room as the camera began to roll. The hush was finally broken by Yandy. The goal of this retreat was to help us rebuild and reconnect, but it became something else entirely. We all know, I believe, why Erica didn't respond. I'm not hostile toward you, Yandy added. I don't even think you're bad. However, I do feel deceived, and I'm not sure whether we can recover from that. Slowly, Erica nodded. I don't think you'll pardon me. I do want to say something. but not immediately. Everyone was watching intently as the room leaned in a little. I have experienced a great deal throughout my life, items that cause me to act before thinking, and it isn't a justification, it's just the reality. I felt trapped, I experienced judgment, and I snapped. What I said was inappropriate. A pause occurred, not about the cops in particular. Mendes gazed at her, looking for genuineness in her face. That is a beginning, he remarked. A dot spice, she folded her arms. People aren't going to just get over this, are they? Yes, Erica answered. However, Bambi said, I had to say it. Let it be the last instance, since the following